Jai Gurudev. The Bhagavad Gita was given by Sri Krishna to Arjuna in a battlefield. Now, uh, out of curiosity, these questions come to anyone who is very fond of knowledge, the hidden meaning behind this knowledge. The first is, why was the Bhagavad Gita given to Arjuna in a battlefield? Krishna could have well given this knowledge well before the battlefield, well before the battle, and could have prepared Arjuna very well in advance. Now, life, it's an allegory to the saying that life itself is a battlefield. So there is constant conflict between good and bad. And the Vedas, the knowledge of yoga, the knowledge of meditation, knowledge of how to save our mind, the Vedas and Upanishads, all these things have their origins in the forest, Aranyaka. That happened in a discussion between the rishis and their disciples. But that is not to say that these knowledge will only be useful in a very peaceful environment. So the entire setup, maybe Bhagavan or Sri Krishna framed the entire setup in a battlefield to make a point, to prove the point, saying that all this knowledge is very, very practical. Life itself is a battlefield. And this knowledge of Vedas, this knowledge of meditation, yoga, how to save the mind, is very, very practical. And if it is given in the battlefield, which is synonymous to life, that makes more sense. That's the reason why Krishna chose to give the knowledge of Gita, the song of Gita, in the battlefield. The life itself is a battle. There's a constant battle going on in the life between the good and the evil, between what is right and what is wrong. Now, this knowledge of Vedas they're very, very practical. The knowledge of yoga and meditation, and therefore, the setting in the battlefield is very apt. Just to prove that being in the world, being amidst all the problems that we face in the world, this knowledge can be of very practical use. And once we follow this knowledge, we can come out of the difficulties. So that's the significance of Sri Krishna giving this knowledge of Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna in a battlefield. Next is, in the Upanishads, there are two birds. This is in the Mundaka Upanishad, there are two birds that states that one bird sits higher up in the branch and the other bird sits lower up in the branch in a tree. The other bird, what the other bird does is, it constantly eats the fruit, and sometimes it becomes very happy having tasted a very pleasant, very sweet fruit, and sometimes gets very disappointed having tasted a very bitter fruit. So the symbolism of Arjuna's and Krishna's relationship represents the individual soul and the cosmic reality, the Jivatma and Paramatma. What does the Jivatma do? Is the Jivatma is always on the look for something. In the process, it meets many pleasurable situations and many unpleasurable situations. It becomes pleasant and unpleasant. So it takes the Jivatma into the roller coaster of life, ups and downs of life. But the witness consciousness within us, the cosmic reality, the Paramatma within us, it's always a witness. So the relationship between Krishna and Arjuna represents this very beautiful relationship between the Jivatma and Paramatma. In fact, when the bird that is constantly feeding on fruits, the bitter fruit and the pleasant fruit, when it realizes that the outside world of fruits is of no use, no importance, it always takes us to a roller coaster, it constantly moves towards the higher bird, the higher self. And once it moves towards the higher self, at a point it realizes there is no difference between the two. So therefore the Jivatma is the same as the Paramatma. Only thing is not to be carried away by the ups and downs of life, the roller coaster of life. That's when the individual soul realizes that it is in fact the higher self itself. So that's the relationship between Krishna and Arjuna that is very depicted, very beautifully depicted in the Bhagavad Gita. And if we observe in the entire battle, Krishna never raised a weapon. Krishna remained in a witness consciousness. So this is also a symbolic representation of saying that our self, the self within us is always a witness. It doesn't partake in anything. But the Jivatma, individual self, partakes in the fruits of life, the pleasurable and unpleasurable situations in life. But the witness consciousness within us remains ever free, ever unattached. So therefore, Krishna remaining a witness to the battle is a symbolic representation of the conscious, the pure higher self, the consciousness within us, which is ever free, which is ever unattached, and which is just a witness to all the other layers of existence. And when the time came for Krishna, for Arjuna and Duryodhana to seek the help of Krishna, so the Krishna, the Lord Bhagavan, remained very neutral. In fact, he gave equal choice to both Krishna as for to Arjuna and Duryodhana. But Duryodhana, out of his own temptations, out of his own impressions in the mind, he made a wrong choice. He chose Krishna's army. He chose Krishna's entire battlefront as against Krishna. But Arjuna, being the good soul, he thought that just Krishna by the side, forgetting this battlefront, all this army, just Krishna by his side. The Arjuna was so confident that just having Krishna by his side will take him through the battle. So in life, similarly, the higher self, it doesn't give us it's always gives a choice. It doesn't discriminate between good and bad. Just like Krishna, Arjuna and Duryodhana were given choice of choosing what they wanted, but based on our own impressions in the mind, as per our intellectual capability, we tend to choose what is right and what is wrong. So the more we choose the self, like Arjuna seeking Krishna, so the victory is always guaranteed in life. But if we look at outside pleasures of life, then we'll have to meet the fate of what Duryodhana met in the birth. So Arjuna and Duryodhana represents the good and bad tendencies within us. So as per our intellect, as per our level of discrimination, what we choose comes. So if we choose the higher self, if we choose Krishna, that is what comes to us. So just like a director in a movie, the director in a movie doesn't discriminate between the hero and villain. So he gives equal choice. He gives equal importance to both hero and the villain. So Krishna gave equal choice to both Arjuna and Duryodhana. So the good tendencies and bad tendencies are always there, but based on our intellectual capability, based on our maturity, we tend to choose. We tend to attract what is right and attract what is right. So these are some of the questions that come up in the Bhagavad Gita and their hidden meanings. Jai Guru.